Cinderella is Dead by Kalynn Bayron. I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is I didn't really like this book. The good news is this was Kalynn Bayron's debut novel, and it's not the first Kalynn Bayron book I've read. I previously read You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, which is a more recent release, which is not a perfect book, but it's better than this one. And that tells me that Kalynn Bayron has improved as a writer, which is good. Although I don't think the writing is the problem here. This is just a weird premise. I think most writers would have had a problem making this world feel believable. This was very hard to suspend my disbelief for a lot of this, and that's like one of my major problems. I had a couple. Again, I didn't think this was like a great book. It has some merit. I think the overall message is really good. I think it has some good qualities, but it's just kind of weird. So we'll get into a plot summary, and then I'll give my thoughts on some of the craft and the choices that were made here. This is marketed as a Cinderella retelling. It's not really a retelling, it's just about Cinderella. But this is a world where Cinderella was a real person. She died 200 years ago, and the story of Cinderella, our story of Cinderella, is like their religious text that they have to follow to a T. And Cinderella is like a religious iconic figure, kind of. So they have a king, and he's very strict. He's an evil dictator. Spoiler alert. The girls are required to read Cinderella and memorize it and try to be like Cinderella. And a big thing is there are these balls. So there's like when you come of age, you go to these balls, and in the society, women are second-class citizens. They basically have no rights. They are just wives and mothers, and like maybe they do like feminine work, like a seamstress or something. There's a lady in this who's a seamstress. Like her husband owns the shop, and he gets all of the money, and women have literally no rights whatsoever, basically. So at like 16, when you come of age, women go to this ball where they're supposed to dress up like Cinderella, be very pretty, be very great women, and the men of the town just go and pick out wives. And it's not like a matchmaking event. Men just pick, they go, I want that one, and then they get that one. And you have 3 chances at this ball, like 3 different years. I don't know if it's held multiple times a year, it doesn't matter. But if you don't get chosen the first 3 times, and you just get fucking kidnapped and like jailed and killed, basically, is what they think. Which is like, that just doesn't seem efficient for a society. Like we learn later on what happens to them. It's kind of like a magical spoiler, but like that's just not an efficient way to run a society where you just supposedly kill a bunch of people who could be workers. I don't know. And like what does your workforce look like? There's a lot of like logistical questions here with how this city is run, country. I mean, it's just like a city in France. Lille, Marseille, I don't really know. But it's like, it's not like they make up for the lack of population by like having a bunch of kids and like everyone's trying to have a bunch of sons so that we have workers to run the city. They just hate women. I don't know. But like just the idea of Cinderella as your evil dictator text. Why? How is this? Okay, I get some of this, like how you could misconstrue some of Cinderella. So like you have to be pretty, and you know, you, even if you're from poverty, you have to try to be really pretty and be, you know, the best woman, and then the you'll be deserving of the prince. And there's a whole thing with like there's definitely a class divide here. So the rich kids, like, you can afford a really nice dress and really nice makeup, and you could also pay off a suitor. That way you're guaranteed to get chosen and you don't go fucking die because you're ugly. And then the poorer girls are punished. Like there's one girl who, like, her family's pretty destitute. She can't dress nice. She actually goes and the king's like, you're so fucking ugly that like I don't even care that this is only your second ball. You're fucking dead. You disgraced me by being so ugly and wearing such an ugly dress to my ball. Get out of here. And I guess the idea there is that they're like supposed to like say Cinderella, the text, like a prayer kind of, and if they're like pious enough and devoted to Cinderella enough, then the fairy godmother will supposedly come and help them, and it doesn't matter if they're poor. So, like, if you were just pious enough, the fairy godmother would have given you a nice dress. And since she didn't, then you're evil and ugly. Go die. So I guess that's how you misconstrue some parts of Cinderella. But, like, the whole message of Cinderella is, like, don't underestimate people and don't treat people badly because you think they're lesser than you, because you never know what they could become with proper support and assistance. And, like, don't bully people. And then the king just bullies everyone. I just don't really understand how this text becomes your evil dictator text. I don't get it. It's just weird. And also we learned that this ruler, like this lineage, will say, I won't get into spoilers. Don't read this. It's not very good. But we learned that this ruler in, like, this line has been around before Cinderella. So, like, what the fuck did they do before Cinderella? Like, what? And it does explain how, like, this fascism came about very slowly, and, like, the king got stricter and stricter and, like, took away more and more freedoms over time, and that, like, eased people into this oppressive regime, which is good. I do think the message about dictators and, like, an oppressive society does work. It's very simple, but this is a YA book. It's very YA. I would recommend this for, like, the 12 to 14 age range. It's very simple. I do think a kid would get something out of this message. Maybe not an adult. This isn't something new that an adult hasn't seen before. I think this kind of message is in a lot of YA books. I do think the dictator message is maybe a bit better here than in other YA books, because a lot of it is, like, very explicitly spelled out, and they talk about how things gradually progress and about how people go along with it because they're scared, and about how people are just so ingrained in this that they don't even think to fight back, and things like that. Like, I think this book does a good job of telling the major theme and the major message in a very accessible, explicit way for a young audience that is maybe just being introduced to these ideas. But I do think a lot of, like, the actual plot of, like, taking down the society is really tropey, and it's exactly what you'd expect out of a YA dystopian novel where a very powerful teenage girl has to lead the resistance. But anyway, I'll just get into, like, a summary. I guess I wasn't doing the summary. I kind of was. I was explaining the lore, the world building, which is weird. So we have our main character, Sophia. She's, like, 17. She's a teenage girl. She's a lesbian. I actually did also like the queer storyline in this. I'll get into. So Sophia does not want to go to this ball and marry a man. She is in love with her best friend Aaron. They're kind of in a secret relationship, but Aaron doesn't want to run away. Sophia wants to run away and just, like, try to build a life away from this society, away from the expectations on them, where she can be with Aaron. And Aaron's like, no, like, we can't do it. It's impossible. I'm just gonna live the life I'm supposed to, that my parents have organized for me. I'm gonna do everything the way I'm supposed to. I'm gonna follow the law. It sucks, but, like, that's just what it is. And then Sophia ends up meeting a gay man who, he just, like, knows that she and Aaron are in this secret relationship that they don't really tell anyone about. I don't know how he knows that. He proposes a lavender marriage, or, like, at the ball. He's like, I'll pick you, and then we can just, like, secretly be gay. And she's like, no, that's not good enough. I want to run away and be openly myself. So they make a plan to run away, but then she's like, that's not enough either. I have to help all of these people, so I have to take down the king. And that's the plot of the book, is her trying to take down the king. And early on she meets a woman named Constance, who is a resistance fighter from out of town. And then we get introduced to the idea that the Cinderella story is false. It's a fake story, fabricated and heavily altered by the king. The real Cinderella story is very different. So Prince Charming was actually evil, and the evil stepsisters were actually really nice, and they loved Cinderella. And Constance is the descendant of one of the evil stepsisters who have been plotting against the king like this whole time, the last 200 years. And she's like leading a resistance. There's like a couple other fighters. We meet like one of them. This isn't a very large resistance network. And also she's a teenage girl, so I don't know why she's that important. I think her parents are dead. I don't know. Whatever. It's a YA. You expect teenagers to be in charge for some reason. So she teams up with Constance to make a plan to destroy the king. And Constance is the actual love interest, which I really liked because Aaron, her like best friend who she's in a secret relationship with, who I thought would be her love interest, is kind of annoying because she's not very active. She's just a scaredy cat. Which, I mean, reasonably, the king will just fucking kill you. But obviously, like, Sophia deserves someone who actually is, like, brave enough to be with her, which is Constance. Constance is also queer. They are immediately flirting, which I also really liked. Because I think this book is so tropey and, like, just so cliche, I actually think it's a really good example of a popular fiction book. I could see this being in school libraries, like a middle school library, and to have a queer character be the lead in that and be like explicitly queer is like kind of really rad, because I think a lot of kids maybe haven't read a lot of stories with queer leads at that age range, and like a dystopia YA that's really popular, they might pick this up and they'll learn about fascism and also queer people, which I think is good. And I think this was a pretty popular book. It has 85,000 ratings on Goodreads. It has 13,000 reviews, so that's pretty popular. So like I could see this being in like schools, maybe not. Maybe it depends on the place. But I really like that she was very sort of openly queer. I mean, she can't go around telling it to everyone, but she told her parents, and she does have somewhat terrible parents. So there's like some real twirling mustache evil villains here who are just kind of evil for the sake of evil. But there are some people who are a bit more complex, like her parents, who are kind of homophobic, very sexist, but they were raised that way. And it's not that they really agree with the king's policies, it's just that they're afraid to fucking die. And so they have to go along with it, and they're afraid that something will happen to Sophia if anything gets out about her and Aaron. So she's like, they're really trying to discourage her from being with Aaron. They're really trying to find her a good husband so that she can live a safe life. Which is homophobic and sexist, but like sympathetically so, because they're just trying to keep her safe. So like that's a bit more interesting than like some of the guards. She'll meet just like random men who are like, oh ho ho, pretty young girl. And you're like, oh, you're just evil, two-dimensional characters. So Sophia's like told her parents that she's queer, and like has stated her intentions of like, yeah, I want to marry someone I love and like live my own life. And then when she meets Constance, they're just immediately flirting. There's no like, you know, oh, I'm gay, but I don't want to think about it. I can't tell anybody. And there's not a lot of internalized homophobia from her, which I liked. So it's pretty explicitly queer. It's not like explicit. There's no explicit scenes. It's very YA. But they are definitely flirting. There's definitely a little YA romance going on here between two women. And I think that would also be good for young audiences. And that defied my expectations again, because I thought they'd be like really, really secretive about it. And it would be like very hush hush. And, you know, absolutely no one can know this about me until the very end of the book, when then maybe I'll tell my parents or something like that, you know, which you see a lot in YA, and especially like this sort of medieval setting YA. I don't really know what year or where we are here, you know, it's just like fairy tale land that's like sort of vaguely medieval. So I think the themes are good, and I think the queer representation's good. The main character's also black. I don't think that really actually plays that big a part of this. Not to be like a white guy being like, oh, it doesn't matter that she's black. But I don't think race really gets brought up a lot here. Like at all. It's really about the sexism. But she is like, oh, it's a black queer girl Cinderella retelling, which is why I think a lot of people read this and why it was like so successful in the marketing. and it reached a lot of new people. And again, I hope kids read this, because I think children will get something out of this, but I think if you're older than like 14 or 15, don't read this book. The plot's just, it's just so tropey, and it some of the dialogue's pretty stilted and like just weird, like sort of old-timey fairy tale. It just doesn't feel natural, and it's definitely not like contemporary. It's not awful. Sometimes it's okay, but sometimes you're like, oh, that was a very weird phrasing. And sometimes the main character's kind of stupid. Not in like an action way, but like she'll see something, or like she'll learn some information and then they'll like repeat it a little bit later, and she's like, that's crazy. I didn't know that, but we just learned that bit. Like the reader picks up on it like a couple paragraphs before the main character does sometimes. And you're like, come on, honey, you got this. And that sort of felt contrived sometimes. Like, I don't think this character was that dumb because she's leading a resistance to take down a king, and spoiler alert, she does it. It works. She takes down the king, so like she can't be that dumb. I understand she's repressed and like doesn't know a lot of things and has been fed a lot of lies her entire life, but like, come on, girl. You don't really want your audience to be smarter than your main character. Again, that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, it happens a few times where you're like, oh, come on. Yeah, I don't know. That's the plot. They work to save the king. I'll say the first third of this book is like the worst part of this, because you're like really stuck in this town with like all of these people who are very backwards in our minds, and it's just like, it's kind of boring, and there's a lot of evil villain stuff, two-dimensional evil villain stuff. And then she escapes and meets Constance, and that was a breath of fresh air, because again, Constance was a better love interest, and she added a lot to the plot and like knew a lot of information. It was just like a very big change in pace, and you know, like where we were going and what was going to happen and like the possibilities. So I'm glad they left the city. I thought at first this was going to be a lavender marriage tale where she and her gay husband and her secret girlfriend are all like, you know, quietly working together to make a plot to take down the king, but that wouldn't have worked because there's like magic involved. They meet the fairy godmother. You get the fairy godmother involved. I guess, is that kind of a Cinderella retelling? Teenage girl meets the fairy godmother? Maybe. It's not what you think though. There is some cool twist like at the end here and like in the climax confrontation. So like, it's not the worst book in the world. It's just very simple. I'm not in the target demographic here. This is for younger readers. I don't recommend this for adults. Maybe if you really love Cinderella. I don't know if I've even seen Cinderella. I definitely haven't read it. But I mean, I knew enough. It's Cinderella. It's not... Everyone knows the vague premise of Cinderella. Which is why it was just weird that they made that their evil doctrine. Because, like, it's a story about not bullying people. Stop bullying people. How do you have an evil dictator? Like, how are people reading the story of Cinderella, who's so poor and unfortunate and underestimated and, you know, treated so poorly by all the richer people around her, and but like and then how do they like live themselves in poverty and be like, yeah, the king should oppress me, actually, he's right and I don't know jack shit, and the fairy godmother doesn't help me because I'm just not pious enough. I don't know how that happened. Of all the stories, of all the fairy tales to make an evil dictator regime around, why that one? Why was this not a different retelling of a different story? There's gotta be a better one. Unless, like, the actual version of Cinderella is different. Is that a grim fairy tale? I don't read fairy tales. They're boring. I don't care. I didn't watch them as a child. Do I look like someone who watched a lot of Disney princess movies? I was into Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! But it was just weird. It was just a weird idea. Again, the themes were good. And I think her writing has maybe improved. I've only read 2 Kalynn Bayron books. I'm hoping this is the worst one, because I don't want to read anything worse than this. That'd be pretty bad. I gave this like 2 stars. just because I think there's something in the message and I liked the queer aspect, but like it wasn't very good. And then this was very tropey, and You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight also fell victim to some tropes. But later in the novel, like part of it wasn't like that. And so I do think she's getting better as a writer. I'm going to read more of her books. Again, hoping this is the worst one. And hoping something's even better than You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, which was an okay book. Not perfect, but okay. So, I don't know. I'm still interested in reading more from this author. I've heard good things about her, so I'm guessing some of her later books are better. But we'll see, and I'll tell you. Like and subscribe, and then you'll see those videos when I post them, because I will post them. I'll read all of her sapphic books, which I think like all of them are sapphic, so I'll read all of her books. Stay tuned. Subscribe.